you kind of just need to set a plan, and the plan should be to get out of your own way, which is basically hire smart people, trust in them, give them autonomy, let them make mistakes, let them learn from their mistakes, and then just kind of let them do their thing. And your job is to always kind of then think ahead, what's the next big problem?
This episode is produced and distributed by Be Connected. We help senior marketing leaders and business decision makers transform their social media and content into strategic growth engines. Hey, I'm Brad Zabalski, and welcome to The Spun Show. What is The Spun Show? It's a chance for us to pause and absorb knowledge, thought leadership, and insights from people who have done it. People who have walked the walk, or people who are walking the walk right now. These are thought leaders, entrepreneurs, senior marketing leaders right in our backyard. Today, I am really pleased to have my friend Zach Stuck here in the studio talking about his founder journey of the agency Homestead and the D2C brand umbrella Easy Street Brands. They have several brands that they've been able to build into 7, 8, 9-figure brands just in the span of a few years. His story is inspiring, and there's so much to learn from. Let's dive in. Well, thanks everybody for being here with The Spun Show. And I am really, really excited to have the guest that we have today, which is Zach from, there's so many different brands. Zach Stuck from Homestead Studios, from Easy Street Brands, which is notably known for hollow socks. And I guess introduce yourself a little bit for whatever titles you go by and what work you're affiliated with here.
Yeah. So day-to-day title is CEO of Easy Street Brands. But I own an ad agency called Homestead. And basically my background was starting an e-commerce business when I was back in college, landed a job at an ad agency, dropped out of college to kind of pursue that career. Jumped around between freelancing and a few different agencies where I learned all about growth marketing, and 7 years ago started Homestead, which is still around today. And then 3 years ago stepped on as the CEO of Homestead to focus on building out a portfolio of direct consumer brands.
Now, can you walk me through that a little bit? Because you and I talked several years ago where you had the vision of having brands under a portfolio and going into the D2C route. How did it go? How did that go with being able to see that vision come to life? I know you started Homestead first, but then Easy Street come after that. Was that something that you always had part of the plan, or was that something that came naturally, or something fell in your lap, or how did you actually go from the transition between agency into brand?
It's funny. So the first e-commerce business that I started, I ran a Kickstarter campaign for it. And so this is back, I don't even know now, 14 years ago. I was Googling, Kickstarters, Appleton, Wisconsin, Kickstarters, Wisconsin.
There was so many Kickstarter campaigns back then in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Exactly. So I ended up meeting a gentleman named Brian Davis. So I met Brian a long time ago and, asked him to go grab coffee, buy his coffee. He could just tell me how he did Kickstarter because he had some experience with it. And that business that he was running and did Kickstarter for is called Fix It Sticks. Brian ended up selling that business and still owns a small stake in that company. But over time, Brian and I kind of went our own ways. I did my own thing, worked at a few agencies. And then when I was starting Homestead, I was leaving an agency where Brian and I worked together again. So Brian and I met again at Optimal Digital Marketing and had the opportunity to work together. And when I shared with Brian that I was going to go out on my own, he shared with me, he's like, hey, well, I still have this Fix It Sticks company. I sold it, but they still need help with digital. And so Fix It Sticks was my first freelance client that became the first Homestead client. And we took Fix It Sticks from, low 7 figures in annual revenue to an 8-figure business. And Brian got to see kind of what I brought to the table with that and helped his company even after he sold it. It was very big in more B2B than it was direct consumer. But throughout that process and it being a Homestead client for a few years, Brian still owned part of it. So he got to see and got to benefit from Fix It Sticks growing even after he sold the majority of it. But he brought the idea to me 3 years into Homestead and said, or 2 years into Homestead and said, "Hey, I wanna do the sock company, these alpaca socks. Would you be interested in doing this with me?" So, Hollow, originally called Follow Hollow, was Brian Davis's idea. He's an inventor, he's incredible with product concepts.
Shout out to Brian.
Brian
I
is
hope
like
you watch this. But I've always admired
yeah,
how much of an inventor you are. Just that's all.
it's pretty crazy, yeah. He gets very agitated by things and then rabbit holes in and comes up with a great, product idea for it. So, um, anyway, so Brian brought that idea to me while I was starting Homestead, starting the agency business. And so that was kind of my first shot of like, okay, I'll take a minority interest in this business. I own 15% out of the gate, and I'll help him with the marketing. Brian was the CEO for the first 2 years. We did a Kickstarter, got a little bit of traction, and then uh, what was this? Now 4 years ago, I went to Brian and said, "Hey, I've taken some brands at the agency now to even like 9 figures in revenue that were clients that came to us that were 7-figure businesses that we took to 9. I think I've got what it takes to run a direct-to-consumer brands. Why don't you and I find a way to like renegotiate equity, and I'll take over as CEO and you can just step aside." So that's what we did. So basically, Brian and I had a handshake agreement where we took 85-15. He owned 85, I owned 15, and we flipped. So I own 85, he owns 15 of Hollow. I kind of rebranded it from Follow Hollow just to Hollow, and off to the races we went. So that's kind of how the transition started. And then after the success of Hollow, which is kind of, I can tell that story, but it was kind of a no-brainer that I wanted to get outside of client services and start building my own brands.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's people love to talk about the hustle culture and, putting the work in and taking advantage of opportunities and things like that. But you've really shown the opportunity there and what you can make out of it if you put the work in. So give me a little bit of some context in terms of like how big has Homestead gotten? I know you started with one client, having the one agency
Yeah.
client. But how big has Homestead gotten, and then how big has Hollow gotten?
Yeah. So Homestead again started. I was just the founder of the business, so just me. We went from me to 7 employees our first year, 7 to like 14 second year, and then 14 to 30 in our third year. And that was a pretty big year. And that was the year that my now business partner and CEO of the business, Riley, really stepped up and said, "Hey, like I can become your partner here. I will ride or die with you, and we'll figure this out together." And we just had a good rhythm, and as we were kind of growing, is a rough like one client per team member. So at that point, we were probably around 35 clients. And that's when I told him like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this Hollow thing. Can you handle this?" And it was a big conversation to have with your business partner to be like, "Hey, I've been CEOing this. I'm the majority owner of the company. You now have a small stake. You take it over and run it." So it was a big bet on Riley and a big bet on me for him to like kind of trust in me that this business would keep going and he could do everything that I was doing, which I had full confidence that he could. Um, and Riley's grown that business. Yeah. So now today, we're wrapping like, Q4 2025. We're 82 full-time employees.
Holy smokes.
And we service somewhere between like 90 and 100 direct-to-consumer brands between paid ads, creative, and then retention, which is email and SMS.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
Well, a ton of them are remote, right? So you've embraced the remote.
we're fully remote.
Yeah.
We're fully remote, which is nuts. Yeah. When I was starting the business, we were all here in Appleton, which is crazy. Yeah. We grew it to 15 people here in Appleton. And a lot of them were people that I got to move back here.
Also shout out in this building.
Yeah. In this, that we're recording. This is the first, in this building is the first office.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Homestead's grown to a pretty big agency at this point, which has been cool to see. And obviously having that access still and ability to know so many people in the direct consumer space has been extremely helpful for me building my own.
What were the biggest things that you learned of cusps that you have to get over when you get to employee sizes? So like, getting over the double digit employees, going from like into 30 plus employees and then 50 plus employees. Like, what are the biggest things you learned there?
I mean, I think like it gets really hard at 10 to 12 people because at 10 to 12 people, there's no middle management yet. It's usually just the founder, CEO, and then a bunch of individual contributor people. and then all 10 people likely report to you.
Yeah.
And so you need to figure out, okay, how can I bring in that first person to help manage this team and make sure that they're getting all the resources that they need, their clients are being serviced properly, that someone's not slacking, whatever. So that was like the hardest one. And then we were promoting from within too. We didn't hire any outside people to come in and become a manager in the first few years. The next batch or like next chasm was like, I don't know, I think like 40 to 50 where we were hiring people and I didn't even know who they were. So people would just like show up in Slack and I'd be like, Riley, who is this? You're like, oh, that's our new, lead media buyer. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is a weird, trippy feeling.
Yeah, no,
that I wasn't a part of like any of the interview process.
out of body experience.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, like now it's crazy. Obviously I like support Riley and what he's built, and we have a chief of staff and a head of retention and a head of paid who do an incredible job. But there's, I don't know, of the 80, I probably don't know half the people on the team or have never talked to them, which is nuts.
That is nuts.
And they, obviously Riley knows all of them and knows everyone deeply there, but it's a weird feeling to have a company that you own that you don't know all the employees that work for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think those are kind of the main few. It's just kind of like
And how big is Hollow now?
So Hollow we have about 25 full-time employees at Hollow. And yeah, I mean, that business has grown pretty aggressively. So yeah, so like first year we did $1 million, $1.2 million, I think it was in our first year, we were pretty stoked about.
Yeah.
I remember like when I go back, and I still always process this, but it was a client at Optimal, and it was an e-commerce business, and they're like, we want to do $1 million in our first year. And the amount of anxiety, I was my client, that I had to get to $1 million in the first year was it was unfathomable to think that could happen. And then 3 years later, we just like did it with Hollow, and it was like, okay, like obviously you learned a lot of skills in between those two. But that was crazy. So yeah, so $1 million our first year, we did 8 million our second year, 21 last year, and we'll do somewhere between like 40 and 45 million this year.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty nuts. Yeah.
I would like to pause this conversation so we can just take a minute to absorb some of the stuff that we've already learned so far. Zach has been awesome to talk to, and he will share even more insights about growing his businesses right after this. If you find this useful so far, please share this with a peer, a colleague, a friend, or anybody else that might be inspired by this message. This episode was brought to you by Be Connected, which is a social media and digital marketing firm serving Northeast Wisconsin. If you're interested in the BC Podcast Network, either in sponsorship or having your own show, please reach out to us at beconnectedllc.com. That's the letter B, connectedllc.com. Now let's get back to this conversation and absorb some more. So obviously you talk about the anxiety piece of like, yeah, we want to do $1 million, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to hit that number. And then now that you've done it and you've grown through that,
Yeah.
what's your take on anxiety as it relates to scale or numbers or goals or things like that? Like, have you become numb to it, or is it just in context with the scale that you're at?
It's like there's a new level of anxiety with each kind of stage of the business I'm learning. So like we just did our first trade show for Hollow, and we showed up and there's brands in there that you're like, North Face, boom, huge North Face. I'm like,
yeah,
we don't belong here. Like, this is insane. But so there's, there's moments like that when you walk into the trade show and you're like on the floor for the first time and you're seeing these massive brands that you've heard about and worn their clothing, worn whatever, known about for your whole life, or at least whatever, adulthood, that now you're like next to. That was kind of a most recent, like, pretty high anxiety, trippy feeling.
Yeah.
But no, it feels like, each level has its own version of that. I think at a certain point you have to have fun with it though. Otherwise it just eats at you.
Yeah.
And I think I let Homestead eat at me too much, to the point that I wasn't like as good of a leader, as good of a partner to my wife Veda. Like, it was just so stressful and I was so obsessed with it like going well that I wasn't able to zoom out and like enjoy the fun parts of it as much.
Yeah.
Where now with Hollow, I feel like we do have fun moments where we get the whole team together and just like have a good time, and I'm fully present there, where like maybe back in the early days of Homestead we'd do like a Christmas party and I'd still be like thinking about a client that we just churned or something like that.
Yeah. Well, from an agency standpoint, I totally get the stress of like, oh, somebody's trusting you and you want to hit these goals. I don't know if I'm cut out for it. I know I feel like I'm cut out for it, but
Yeah.
I'm not like that stress. And um, being able to translate that into like your own brand
Mhm.
that you are responsible for, but you still apply all the same
Yeah.
tactics to or whatever.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that, instead of just hitting 1 million, like going after 20 or
Yeah.
30 or whatever, that it's like you have everything on the line,
Totally.
but also you're not disappointing anybody except yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say like the biggest thing with Hollow is in just the brands is just financial stress.
Yeah.
Like I think the agency business is more of a cash flowing business. It's easier to take money out where like a brand you might do a big number of revenue, but you're not taking, you might even do a few million in profit, but you're not taking a few $1 million out of the business, right? So um learning how to like bring on, banks, debt, financing, all of these things that it requires to build a consumer brand, like was all new to
Yeah.
me. Obviously, I had no background. I was in growth marketing before. So,
So considering this is the Sponge Show where we all like absorb knowledge from other sources and things like that, shout out to the Scalability School, your other podcast.
thanks.
I was listening to an episode where you were talking about taking on debt in order to grow.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you're not just like, shipping in socks and putting your name on it. I believe you said in one of your episodes that you ship in the alpaca
Correct. Yeah.
and then actually manufacture it here
Yeah.
to then send to your customers.
Right.
You're not just like getting it from some,
No.
plant overseas
No.
that ships in and they
Yeah.
kind of white label it or whatever. Like it's legit
Yeah.
product ownership,
Totally.
raw ingredients going out and then taking on the debt in order to do that. So check out Scalability School if you want more
Yeah.
of that.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah. But how has that process been? You talk about hitting $1 million going up to 40.
Yeah.
You're now dealing with way more raw materials, way more manufacturing, way more logistics
Yep.
instead of just ordering more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How has that evolved?
I mean, it's kind of wild to be honest, like how you start to think more about how the world works and you're like, this is a mess. Like just moving things around in shipping containers is just crazy. I don't know how whatever the world stays sane with all of the things that are happening. And we're just a microscopic part of that. So I don't know. It's been interesting to kind of learn logistics of like, importing a raw material. So our little flex now that we joke internally is we're the number one importer of baby alpaca fiber to the US.
Hey,
It's like there's one little, chasm that we have, but anyways, it's just kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, we now have like the Peruvian government like involved in conversations because alpaca is a big export and we're now like a little piece of that big export
you
food.
have a say.
So it's kind of wild learning all of the little details that happen versus, yeah, maybe just starting a brand and, Googling, how do I make socks? And you find a manufacturer in China or you find it on Alibaba and you're like, I want this sock and put Hollow on it.
Yeah.
Very different. Like
Very.
we definitely like from the ground up, sourcing our own raw materials, manufacturing in the US. We now have 4 manufacturers in the US that we're working with. And that's a whole beast of like trying to make product here versus overseas. It's just a different challenge.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to learn each piece of that puzzle.
So when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, 5-7 years going from first client to 80 employees,
Yeah.
million to 40 million.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. It's a good question. Our goal for Easy Street is to do 9 figures in revenue. And that's just like an arbitrary number that I came up with. Our goal is to do that by 2029. We will definitely crack that next year, which is just nuts to think about across all the portfolio brands. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think it's really keep our head down and see if we can maybe sell one of these businesses for a wild number and keep doing it. Like it's
Would
just,
you retire here then, or you go to some beach somewhere?
no. Yeah. So like my parents are here. My wife's parents are here. We're definitely home based here in Appleton.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
But maybe travel a little bit more. I don't know. Like Veda and I talk about it sometimes. We're like, even if that were to happen, what changes?
Yeah.
I love what we do. I love the work that we do. And it's always going to be a big part of my life. I think that it's just maybe reducing some of the stress of like, will that one outcome happen? That sets us up.
Question for you.
Yeah.
when you're looking at scale national brands, international, if you were to talk to somebody, you go back to Zach of client that wants to hit $1 million and
Yep.
anxiety ridden, and or talking to like a local company that's looking to scale, but they can't seem to like get over the cusp of
Yep.
like 5 employees or over the cusp of startup mentality or things like that. What would you tell them that you've learned that you're doing now
Yep.
that they could apply to growing from a marketing standpoint, scaling standpoint, leadership standpoint, anything like that?
Yeah. I think like the biggest thing is just delegation and getting out of your own way. I think a lot of people, you kind of just need to set a plan, and the plan should be to get out of your own way, which is basically hire smart people, trust in them, give them autonomy, let them make mistakes, let them learn from their mistakes, and then just kind of let them do their thing. And your job is to always kind of then think ahead, what's the next big problem? I think a lot of people get caught up in the day to day and caught up in the day to day problems. Like I've talked to a lot of small business owners, and they're worried about like, I don't know, there's like a window that's cracked that's in their like whatever cafe or restaurant or whatever. And they're like, oh, this window. And it's like, stop worrying about the window. Just ask someone on your team, even though if it's not their job to fix the window, ask them if they can help do that. And if they can do that, like maybe give them a day, an extra day off or whatever. Like I think find small incentives, but try to delegate as much as you can, and give other people ownership, because one person alone is not, Elon Musk has gotten to where he is, not by one person alone, right? He's done an incredible job of delegating. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. Idea, delegate, idea, delegate. So I think when I think of all sizes of businesses, usually when people get stuck, it's like the founder's usually getting in their own way to a certain point, or the CEO or whoever is.
Yeah, which can be really difficult for some people if they're like, I get stuck, I get nervous, like, if I pay somebody else to do it and it doesn't work out, out the money or whatever.
Totally.
And it's a learned skill, I think, to be able to delegate and then be okay losing said money.
You definitely have to
Because
take L's. You have to make mistakes for it to like set in and compounds. It's not just going to be like I hired this one thing and it worked out.
yeah,
There's definitely going to be bad actors. There's going to be, bad employees, and that's just kind of how it works out. But I think every one of our companies that is going well, and even in like clients at Homestead, it's like you can see the people that are growing very fast and that are having the most fun are the ones that bring people into their business, give them ownership of things, give them autonomy, give them opportunity to make more, do more of whatever incentive, whatever motivates them, give them more of that if they can do the thing for you.
yeah,
And I feel like that is where the compounding really starts to go. And like Homestead's a great example of that. Riley's absolutely crushed it. Like I've stepped out of the, whatever the CEO role, but he's continued to just like cook, and it's, almost tripled the business, which
yeah.
is great.
How did you meet him?
So one of my first employees I hired knew Riley. So I tweeted first, got an employee from Spokane, Washington named Tim. Tim Adden, he's an OG like Homestead employee. He was employee number one. And he was a media buyer out of Spokane, Washington, saw me talking about Facebook ads on Twitter and was like, hey, maybe I'm gonna go work for this guy. And so hired Tim. Tim knew Riley. He was in Spokane also. And knew Riley was smart and was in an agency already, and we took a shot. So we hired Riley to run our Google department, and he just like stepped up consistently, took ownership, just continued to like show that he had way more than just like running a small Google team.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And somebody you can partner with and grow together
Yeah.
instead of trying to take it all on yourself.
Totally. Yeah.
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 Well, what's to finish things off? One story from the last 2 weeks that made you feel really good about a brand or a team or anything like that?
Yeah. So I was having a call with call him an advisor. It's a gentleman that owns or is involved in a private equity company that works with outdoor companies. And so we were talking about Hollow. We catch up like every 6 months.
Yeah.
Same as Greg. Greg was giving me advice and thoughts on stuff, and I was telling him that we're in Shields for Hollow, and it was going really well. And he's like, "You really need to get into Bass Pro Shop Cabela's. Like that is your spot, Bass Pro Cabela's." And so I wrote out this like nice message to the team. I'm like, number one priority for Q1 2026, Bass Pro Cabela's. And like, no joke, within minutes, I got a text of a screenshot from Brian Davis, my co-founder in the business, from a message from the lead buyer at Bass Pro Cabela's saying, "Hey, we've been following Hollow for a while. We love what you guys are doing. We want to bring you into our stores." And it was just like,
Wait, so that happened at the same time?
literally within like an hour of me,
Manifest.
it was absolutely insane. From having this conversation with this like advisor to me telling the team that this is our focus to this message coming in full out like inbound to us. So that was like a goosebumps, like whatever hair stands up on the back of your neck type of feeling.
No
But
kidding.
that was a fun story this week and a fun thing that the team got to celebrate. So
That-
we're talking to Bass Pro Shop Cabela's tomorrow. So
That's well, I
pretty
hope,
crazy.
I hope it goes well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Zach, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Brad.
Thank you so much, Zach, for joining me on this episode of The Sponge Show. I think it's the exact message that leaders need to hear, especially if they find themselves in a rut or if they can't get over that next hump or over that next cusp of business growth, that maybe all they need to do is delegate or let go of some of the things that are in their control. Sometimes delegation can get you to the next spot that you need to be. These types of inspirational stories are exactly what we can learn from and absorb on The Sponge Show. If you liked the episode by itself, please share it with a colleague, a peer, a friend, or anybody that you work with, as they might be able to learn from it as well. Thanks so much for joining us on The Sponge Show. I hope you were able to absorb some knowledge today, and have a great rest of your day. If today's conversation sparks some ideas for your own business growth, visit BeConnectedLLC.com to subscribe to our newsletter for more strategic insights delivered straight to your inbox. And don't forget to subscribe to the show and share it with other business leaders who could benefit from these growth conversations.